What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Naruto Explain here, bringing you guys another discussion for Boruto Naruto Next Generations anime, and I want to talk to you guys about, just in general, some of my thoughts on what we've just had with the little mini sub arc that took place in the last arc of the actual anime, which is this whole revelation of what's going on with Boro and him having a religious cult. And I've done an in-depth video explaining how during the time after the fourth great ninja war, this cult actually came into fruition. I recommend checking out that video. As you guys know from the actual episode, it was either Naruto or Sai, one of them. They say that this cult came up in the time after the fourth great ninja war. That's one of those instances where the anime is expecting you to know the other tidbits of lore. So I did a whole video breaking that down. Now again, I recommend checking that one out. That's probably one of the better edited videos on this channel. But now that we've had a few days to actually digest what happened in the actual episode, I have to say I have mixed emotions. I'm not saying that the episode was bad, I'm not saying that, but I do kind of wish the anime did with Boro what they did with the character of Victor, where we had more layers added to Victor's character, and what they did with Al, where they added extra layers to Al's character very briefly, where we saw how Al was struggling with his life after the fourth great ninja war, how he actually survived, and Al meeting Kashi and Koji and meeting Victor and getting those scientific enhancements done to his body. I would have liked to actually seen something where we see Boro, what his infinite Tsukuyomi dream would have been, how he actually met the character of Jigen, how he was actually bamboozled into following the Kara organization and worshiping the Otsutsuki clan, actually seeing him kind of try and find those children who are going to be suitable enough to try and put the karma seal on them. I really feel like that was a missed opportunity. You didn't have to do an entire episode for that, but I do feel like they could have slipped in more of that in flashbacks, either in this last episode, or you could have did so before we got to the whole Sarda and Team 7 versus Boro fight. I really feel like that was a missed opportunity right there. We needed more of the why behind Boro. I think that they just scratched the surface and gave you the bare minimum of what you need, and just expected you to understand what Sai or Naruto meant when they said that it was in the last decade plus after the ninja war ended where this cult began to pop up. Again, if you read the novels, you understand where the framework for that came from, but I really feel like they kind of need to just slip something else in there for the actual anime. This was kind of like the issue that the last Star Wars trilogy had, where there were some events that took place in some of the Star Wars novels and comics, to where if you didn't read those actual novels and comics, some of the stuff, in particular the last Star Wars movie, it didn't necessarily make a lot of sense to you. You felt like you got hit a little bit out of left field, like people wondering how was Rey actually reading from the Book of the Wills. That was something that was actually explained in one of the Star Wars comic books. And so Boruto's kind of taken the same approach. You know, Marvel is getting ready to do the same thing with that whole Wakanda files, where you have Shuri's information on the different research and things that are developing in the MCU in real time and explaining backdoor information. Some of that stuff is going to be implemented into the actual movies, and it's one of those things to where at least the MCU understands like not everybody is up to date on this stuff, so let me make a small line kind of explaining more in detail without actually doing a whole exposition info dump. So I kind of wish the anime would kind of add in just a few small scenes, maybe 30 seconds devoted out of the episode with just brief flashback that kind of give you snapshots into some of the things that were kind of dropped to us exposition wise in this last episode, and really just dealing with Boro's cult altogether. A few snapshot moments right there goes a long way, and it doesn't mess up the actual pacing. Don't get me wrong, like I totally understand why they would kind of take the approach that they did, where they just kind of sprinkled scenes here or there, where you have little 4 or 5 minute scenes devoted to Boro and his cult, opposed to doing something like, say, 10 episodes in the actual anime, where essentially you have like a sub arc that deals with Boro and his cult. But the reason why I think that this is a little interesting of a decision, while it did work, don't be wrong, it worked. There wasn't as much depth as I would have liked, but it did work in terms of just the bare minimum of just scratching the surface of establishing Boro and his cult. The reason why I kind of hesitate for a second is I feel like if you did a more condensed version of the car actuation arc, where instead of it being like 18 episodes like how the car actuation arc was, that way they did just enough to where they could actually do a home media release. I think that if you do a more condensed version where it's 8, 9, 10, 11 episodes devoted to this actual cult and investigating the cult, I think it's something that can work if you kind of take the approach that Naruto and Naruto Shippuden have done in the past, where essentially you take the scope off of Boruto in particular and you allow, say, somebody like Rock Lee and Tenten to investigate, or you allow Shikamaru and say Ino, or Shikamaru and Choji, you allow somebody else to go inside of that actual cult and investigate, gather information. You have, say, Sarada or Mitsuki there, or say you have both of them there, and you essentially, that way you have somebody from that new generation there with the old generation, and you allow them to see this darker side of the actual ninja world. And the way that that actually pays dividends for you is just as Victor during that car actuation arc had an entire character arc given to him and motivations, and you saw his backstory, you saw how far the manipulation of car actually worked. I think that you could do a very similar thing here, because Boro in the manga was absolutely boring. The anime did a very good job of just giving him a little bit of a personality, but I feel like when you go this route, you can't half step it. You got to go all the way in on it. And I feel like the anime just walked that very tight line of making Boro seem like a cult enthusiast while also not allowing him to go all the way on the deep end. Like, there's a way that you can do it in snapshots to where it works. Like, say, similar to how Hidan, you didn't see Hidan's origin story in the anime. I've covered that in the actual video explaining how he came into the Church of Jashin and why he actually joined the Akatsuki. The anime actually butchered that in the filler episode for the Itachi novel, where they included that in the actual novel adaptations. You had an entire filler on the formation of the Akatsuki. They completely deviated from what Kishimoto wrote in the data book, but I say that to say you had just enough from Hidan in part 2 to where you totally bought into him that he was this sadistic Jashin worshiper, and he had charisma just going all the way off the screen. I feel like Boro's character was not charismatic enough for you to actually fully buy into the fact that this guy was no Otsutsuki worshiper. I really feel like you needed a little bit more of that fanaticism in order to kind of build towards that moment to where Boruto Shiki eventually just destroys him, and Boro ends up being destroyed by the very race of people that he was worshiping in the first place. I really feel like that's something that could have worked right there, and it adds more for tension and layers, and it builds up, and you kind of get the opportunity to have a contrast between, say, if Sarda's there and she's seeing how Boro is being a charlatan who is leading his people down to a path of hell and destruction, and he's abusing the authority that he has over those people, opposed to somebody like Sarada who wants to be the Hokage and wants to actually lead people on the correct path. I think that that adds an extra layer of conflict to Sarada and Boro once you get to the actual showdown and he ends up being taken out. I think that that is something that could have worked better there. Again, I think the anime made the right decision, but I also feel like this was a missed opportunity, especially when you have a monthly manga and a weekly anime, and the manga builds in room for you to actually explore some anime original content, and instead of actually doing it, you kind of keep your foot on the gas. I feel like this was a huge missed opportunity. If you start this process after episode 199 and you do not even 10 episodes, you can do this in 8 and completely wrap all this up. We've had transition arcs in the Boruto franchise where they've been transition episodes that directly set us up for the next series of events. It's not that hard to say you do episode 200 all the way up to 206, 207, and then you do the episode where Jigen goes to get Kawaki, and then you do the episode where Naruto and Sasuke get defeated by Jigen, and then you do the Naruto rescue stuff. I don't think that that messes up your pacing, because there was enough there to actually do some real serious conflict, and I think that swapping out Konohamaru and Sai, two people who personality-wise, Konohamaru isn't charismatic enough to carry an arc, and Sai, even though Sai's kind of developed more of a personality, Sai isn't enough to be that main focus. I really feel like changing them out with characters from the older generation that have more personality to them, that you have more investment in, I feel like that's something that could have worked better here. However, I want to know from you guys, what are you guys' thoughts on this? Let me know down in the comment section below. But as always, guys, if you like anything I had to say, don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching to the end. Have an awesome day, guys.